Okay, can you hear me now, studio? Yes, excellent. All right. Sorry, everybody. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. Welcome to Anxiety Off, You On, a webinar that will show you how to dissolve panic, stress, and hypervigilance in just seconds. It's a pleasure to be able to share this with you. My name is Darren Deojee, and I've been teaching this technique for 20 years now. But we've never zoomed in on a topic like we're going to do tonight on anxiety and stress, which is something that I've suffered with most of my life. I've struggled going into rooms full of strangers to even introduce myself, having to wait to be introduced. I've held back on sharing things. And yet, in the face of crippling anxiety like that, and self doubt and stress, I've still managed to run events for thousands of people, run retreats for people that I've never met before, and get really good reviews from them, as some of them you might have seen on the landing page inviting you to this session. Now, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to run through a few aspects about anxiety and stress that you may already know. Excuse me, why is this all beeping at me? Who is beeping here? See, I've got a studio for the first time ever, and they may be staying in touch with me throughout this. So if any of you want to interact or ask questions as we're going, you can log into YouTube and post your questions there, and the studio will get that and share them with me. You won't be able to interact with me directly, but similarly, you're not on show here at all. There's no obligation for you to contribute or chat or ask questions, but I will ask for feedback on some of the exercises. And if you could do that, that'll make this much more interactive and rewarding for all of you. Otherwise, running time, we're going to go for somewhere between an hour and a half. If you need to disappear off, that's fine. You'll have access to the replay for a good few days after this. And otherwise, let's just go for it, shall we? This is the first time I've done this using a studio and using this software like this. So please just bear with us if there are a few glitches or blips as we go along. So first of all, we should really probably have a look at what is anxiety and stress and what the existing understanding of it is. And then we'll go from there as to how the Toltecs and myself view it slightly differently. But let's have a look now in the chat. Has anybody got any specific situations with anxiety or stress that they would like us to look at this evening? I'd happily field your live situations so that you can learn how to apply it for yourself. This isn't meant to be an irrelevant transmission. I'm trying to make it as relevant to you who have chosen to be here as possible. So socially, as in the mainstream, anxiety is really understood as a nervous system response to the experience of the world not being safe. That's true in my experience, but there is a lot more to it than that from the Toltec point of view. One of the other aspects of anxiety and stress that's quite worth pointing out is that the difference between them, because a lot of them they're both symptomatically similar, or they can be, but they can also feed off into each other. Anxiety can become stress and stress can become anxiety. And it's good to know the difference between the two to help you navigate your own terrain. So stress is usually a sense of pressure and compression that we experience for an issue that we know about. Whereas anxiety is a little bit like the opposite. It's more like an opening of uncertainty around something that we don't know about. So stress is what we experience when we're facing the known, and anxiety is what we experience when we're facing the unknown. I hope that makes sense to you and maybe matches with your experience. Please let us know in the chat if that rings true for you. So from the Toltec perspective, which is the tradition I was taught in, it's a bit different from that. It's more about us not having enough room for our sensitivity and our feeling. And yes, trust comes into that and safety comes into that. And that's what we're going to unpack as we go through today as the mindset aspect. But the biggest thing to share tonight is the practical aspect of what we can do to open up our bandwidth for our sensitivity to not feel so fried and so frayed, which is where anxiety comes from, really. So let's look at how we become anxious or stressed, first of all. And we'll focus on anxiety, but stress is a consequence or related to it anyway. And the same applies to anxiety that does to stress in the context of this session. So there's two components that result in us being anxious. First of all is sensitivity. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? That if you're sensitive, then you're going to be aware of a whole host of variables that insensitive people might not be. But that's fine if you can handle such a thing. When we become anxious is when we have a problem with trust, and that is trusting the world, trusting that the world is home and that the world is safe and that the world is rooting for you rather than being against you. Now, a lot of us form our opinions about the world from the behavior of other people. And so, because of the unpredictability and unreliability of other people, we put that onto the whole world and we end up believing that the world is unsafe as a result of unreliable, unskillful, and unpredictable people. I think anxiety and stress is on the rise at the minute because it's not just unreliable people that we're dealing with now. Most people could deal with unreliable people when there were reliable structures in our society that could help you feel safe. Structures like the judiciary and law, structures like the government, structures like the council, whatever other structures that you may have grown up trusting and believing were helping keep the world safe and benevolent for you to go around in. And in recent years, most people I know have certainly come to realize that the structures that they were relying on to keep them safe, judiciary and law, government, things like that, are not so reliable. So then we have the rising anxiety that we may have had of children, which was about unpredictable and unreliable and unskillful people. And it's now applying not just to people, but then the structures that we thought would protect us from such people. And I think this is why we're seeing a massive explosion of anxiety and stress, because there's just so much insecurity and uncertainty around as to what can you rely on, what is safe, what is secure. And it's a very difficult question to answer in such uncertain times. And so this program that we're doing tonight, this workshop, can't change the situations in the world, but it can equip you to deal with them much better and enable you to have greater self-care of your own nervous system and your own beingness, so you can deal with things and handle them more comfortably. And I'm sure by the end of the session, you're going to get a real chance to actually experience that. So the other aspect of trust, and this is the really big one thing is about trusting the world. But the other aspect where we become anxious is when we stop trusting ourselves. And this is the big one and this is the one we're really going to have to work hard at, because trusting yourself is an essential component of self-care. And it doesn't mean trusting that you're the most powerful in the room or trusting that, nothing bad can happen. It's maybe looking back on your life at all the situations and scenarios that you've been in that were testing and challenging, maybe even traumatic and difficult and painful, but you came through them and you're still here and you can trust that. Trusting yourself isn't, we've got to watch what we're measuring ourselves against here, because often we lose our trust in ourselves because we have a higher expectation of ourselves than our current capacity and level of skill. So self-trust isn't about trusting your perfection or trusting you can deal with the worst. It's really about trusting that you've got through difficult stuff before, and the likelihood is most situations that you're going to face that you feel anxious in just now, you really have probably the tools and the capacity to deal with them. It's just historical anxiety that's getting in the way of that. And so this technique I'm going to share with you tonight is really going to give you a break from that habitual hypervigilance and nervousness and tension. And from the space of calm and relief that you'll experience, you can make new choices from that place and decide, what you might do differently from what you were doing from an anxious and hypervigilant place. So there's a few aspects to anxiety here that we're going to go through. So the first one is sensitivity and trust. The next one is quite a significant one, and it's to do with the frame rate of our brain. So I don't know if any of you remember when you were a kid and you would make these little booklets where you'd do the little stick man in different positions, and then you could flick through it and get a moving image. And really, we build a moving image whenever we capture more than what's called 24 frames a second. So as soon as we get more than 24 pieces of data a second, we experience stress. And that can translate to anxiety because there's more things going on than we can keep track of. And that puts the system into a state of a nervous response because there's 27 things happening and I can only track 24. So frame rate is a big issue. The next up is a big one that comes from a very famous book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's a book I read over 20 years ago. It's very famous, a big bestseller. But it talks about 2 circles in our mind or our awareness. And it talks about the circle of influence and it talks about the circle of concern. And the circle of influence speaks for itself. It's the things that you can influence, and it's usually quite small. But the circle of influence, a circle of concern, are just the things which concern us, the things that worry us. And that can be very large. In fact, the circle of concern is usually significantly larger than the circle of influence. And if we dwell mentally in the circle of concern, where we have many, many things going on that we can't really influence, then that can add to our sense of stress and anxiety because there are things that we're concerned about, but we're not able to influence them. And it kind of generates a state of powerlessness and helplessness in the system that can then trigger anxiety and stress around things which are really bothering us, but we both can't let go of them and can't do anything about them. So this method tonight is going to help you let go of some of those so that you can free yourself up to act within your circle of influence, which is where you can bring real lasting change in your life. So another thing that needs to be actually honored here is the correctness of your system's response around unreliable and unskillful people. That's why most of us end up anxious, because we've been surrounded by people who are unskillful and unreliable when we maybe thought they were going to be. And that can really, depending on the severity of the instance that trigger that, that can be quite disturbing and traumatizing and can then affect later anxiety. So this is really the nurture field that we grow up in. So we have the societal nurture field, which is how you're met when you're walking down the street and going into the shop. And then there's the home nurture field, which is how your guardians and parents and family members welcomed you or didn't, and how they greeted you and responded to your approaches for connection and interaction. And if we get very shocking responses to that, that can leave us feeling very stressed and anxious, especially around strangers, because if the people that we know are unreliable and unskillful and hurtful, then, there's just a question come in here. Not sure how frame rate per second relates to us. Isn't that a visual thing? Thank you for that question, Sab. No, it is a visual thing, but it's about the brain. The frame rate is actually in the brain, and it's to do with because it's not like your eye stops taking images. Your eye is receiving light all the time. It's the brain that takes the snapshots. So the frame rate is a limitation of the brain, not the eyes. So yes, the nurture field is, I hope that answered your question, Sab. So we end up with this really unreliable matrix to grow up in that then makes it quite difficult to feel confident if you don't have a welcoming support group around you. But again, tonight we're going to show how hopefully, even if you had that, even if you had a lack of welcome, even if you were surrounded by bullying and violence and shocking conditions, that you can still find this place of calm within yourself, and also still find trust in the world and trust in yourself despite the unskillfulness of other people. Okay, and the last one here that I've got on my little list is overthinking. And I've been an overthinker. And overthinking is a product of anxiety. It's not a cause. And in my journeying with it, overthinking is really a natural response in the system, in the nervous system of the body, for when there's like fear. It's fear or panic. If we feel fear or panic in our gut or in our heart, these are the places that we tend to freeze up. It's either in our guts, or in the heart, contract. Once, if it's quite an existential fear, then it's almost like there's a natural inbuilt system in the mammal human, which then sends a message to the brain that it's time to think, because it's time to get us out of this. So if you imagine that there's an animal, and some of you might have seen this, an animal that's been pinned to the ground, and it was doing its business, blah, blah, blah. But then once panic sets in, you'll see the eyes widen and you'll see it looking around much more frantically than it was before. If you consider most wild animals, when you see them, are very measured, they're very tempered, and they're very careful with their movements until panic sets in. And then you'll see head flying about, eyes flying about the place, in a way that's the animal version of overthinking. For us, as sort of like with a cortex and all the rest of it that does think, one of the things that we get added on to our panic response is icicle of fear hits the body, and then signal goes to the brain, quick, find us a way out of this. And so and if we are actually living with low level fear or panic that we've never dealt with, then overthinking never gets the message that it's okay to stop. And so it's constantly looking for a way out of something when actually there's maybe nothing going on right now that is causing active fear. It's a historical fear that never got reset. Okay, so that is the background. Okay. Oh, there's one last aspect that I have to talk about to do with why we become anxious and stressed, and it's quite an important one, and it's to do with self-consciousness and self-awareness, and that is to do with, you know, when we are acting in imperfect ways, and all of us act imperfectly until we get skillful. If you imagine when you were a baby, if any of your parents think about when you saw a baby on the mat, all of you have been babies. And so we all started off the same. We were all lying there on our backs, unable to sit up, unable to stand, pooing and peeing, and we're kind of like lashing our arms around without any skill. That's a pretty grim starting position, and we all started there, very, very unskillful. But then every one of us went through the same process. In about a year, we all were able to walk. In a couple of years, we were able to make sounds that others can understand. Within a few years more, we're able to run and pass drinks and pick things up and all the rest of it. But it took a long, long time, and all of us have forgotten this, but it took an unbelievable length of time and effort to be able to sit up, stand up, walk, and talk. But there's a really interesting thing here that we overlook, and that is that nobody showed you what you do with a leg muscle to make it move. You just saw people walking and moving their legs. And some of you might remember infants watching them kicking their legs as if that's walking. Nobody showed you what you do with a voice box for people to understand the sounds that come out. And even more, bowels and bladders. How could somebody show you how to control your bowel or your bladder? And yet you do. One of the great mysteries in this around self-awareness and consciousness, which we'll be delving into deeply tonight, is that even now, you don't know how you do it. You don't know how you control your bladder. You don't know what you're doing with your voice box. Even me now, as I'm moving my hand around, my conscious mind has no idea how I'm doing it. Science will give you this lovely answer. Oh, a signal went from my brain to move my hand. That is what is happening. It's not how it is happening. And the great mystery here is we don't know how we do these everyday things, but we just know we can. And there's great hope in this because you don't need to know how anything, but it does help to have a demonstration. And that's the difference between, how everybody can walk and talk, but not everybody can skillfully express feeling, because it depends on how skillful the people around you were as to whether you were able to observe and then build that system in yourself. I, for one, was not surrounded by skillful people. It's no fault of their own. The chain goes back far. But the mystery here is that we didn't know how. But the point around self-consciousness is that we become self-conscious when our intended action or intended movement doesn't come out as perfectly as we visualized it. So we've all been there. You imagine you're going to draw this great piece of art, and then you draw it and you're like, oh, I don't want anyone to see this. It's not very good, Or dancing. I don't want anyone to see when I'm not very good. And we end up afraid of our own beginner spaces, and we become afraid of our imperfect action and speech because of how we've been criticized and judged for it in the past, and also because of the unfair and unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves for that to be perfect. And so we self-generate anxiety around the natural impetus that's moving through us to connect and be in the world, and our own self-image and our self-consciousness saying, but it's not going to be like that, and it's not going to be as good as that, and they're not going to like it, and I know it's not going to be that good. I want to dance, but it's not going to look as cool as I want it to. I want to sing, but it's not going to sound that good. I want to go and talk to that person, but my words are going to tumble, and I know my lips going to shake, and my voice is going to wobble. And our self-consciousness prevents us from meeting ourselves where we are, accepting where we are, and then from that acceptance, being able to make actual change by moving one step at a time in the direction we want to head in. And in a way, we must be willing to give ourselves this beginner space, a kindness for our own imperfections, because as we've already experienced, other people might not. But it's vital that we give it to ourselves, because the truth is there is no mastery without error. There is no mastery without stumbling. Every single one of you has forgotten how many times you fell over before you could stand, how many times you tripped before you could walk, and how many times you bumbled and let out gibberish before you could make a word that was understood. And the question I have for you is, would any of you judge an infant that couldn't walk or a 1-year-old that couldn't talk? You wouldn't judge them for it. You wouldn't expect it of them. And in the same way, we kind of have to forge this crucible of kindness for ourselves, that if you're doing things you've not done before, difficult conversations, difficult situations, we must give ourselves the kindness and the compassion for it maybe not being as perfect as we might like the first few times. Now, these various threads that I've looked at just now, these are all more mindset aspects to be aware of what's triggering what might be a massive unknown of anxiety that we encounter in everyday situations, maybe even just going out for a walk by ourselves, still being in low-level fear and not realizing how many threads are actually influencing it. And there's quite a lot there, as I hope you'll now appreciate. So I think that is enough on the problem, and time to get on to the solution. So before we do, does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to make now? I'm just going to actually have a look at the chat now. Let's have a look here. Here we go. Oh my goodness, I've missed a lot here. Well, first of all, good evening to you all. Thank you for those who said you can't hear anything, because about half the people disappeared in that first 5 seconds when the audio didn't work, which is hilarious. Luckily, I didn't take it personally and think it was because of my hair or something like that. Thank you all for sticking around. Let me catch up here. Good morning, Maddie from Australia. Yes, lovely. Such lovely messages. Right, here we go. Panic attacks, attacks and palpitations, manipulative people, overthinking, what people think of me. Oh, that's the self-consciousness one. That's huge. What they think of you. Fear of failure. Oh my goodness, these are great. Failure in systems. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm taking a few moments to catch up here. There's a great comment here from Sarosium, which is a big failure in the systems that are there to protect us, and they're being abused in the way that they're used. I agree with you, Sarosium. I think that's one of the biggest issues that's affecting rising anxiety just now, because when those structures were intact and in place, then in a way we could deal with the random, unskillful people that were around. Okay. Let's see. All right. So there's a few things there. So The method I'm going to share with you will work for all of the things that you have mentioned here. It'll help with your panic attacks. It's really going to help with palpitations as well. It's going to give you a relief from them. Manipulative people, it's not going to stop them being manipulative, but it's going to help you find a moment of calm in the face of their manipulations so that you can choose new action. Fear of failure is an interesting one. Who said that? That's Jan. So Jan rocks it. Yes. Fear of failure is a really interesting one because that is actually related to self-consciousness. It's about the image that we have of ourselves and the fact that part of us knows that we're not going to deliver that on the first outing. And that's one that I've faced an enormous amount in my life. So I'm very, very familiar with it. And it takes a bit of work, that one, because we gradually have to build up our sense of value in ourselves and also wedge open that beginner space for ourselves. We really got to wedge it open. Because there's an interesting thing around our emotions. I wasn't going to cover this, but it's just coming through now. And a lot of people don't realize that there's a blindness in our emotions that sabotages us all the time. And emotions are not the same as feeling. We just need to unpack that for a moment because it's actually a significant part of this. So let's just make sure I'm not going to lose my context here. All right, fear of failure. Yes. So what ends up happening is that we confuse emotion and feeling. Feeling is a sensation. And so like the pressure on my arm, that's just a sensation. And if I do that to myself, that's fine. And I can grip myself really hard and that's okay. I can even dig my nails in and that's okay because I'm doing it to myself. If somebody else comes along and does that to me, that's a different story. The sensation remains the same. My story is different. And emotions are the body's response to the story, not the sensation. That makes sense? So let's give an example. Say when you were 5 years old, you cut your finger. And you went running to your mom, Mama, I'm dying, all this blood, I'm dying. And your mum takes care of you or whatever it is, wraps it up and all good. But you skip forward to now and you cut your finger with the exact same implement, the same nerves get cut. The sensation, the feeling is the same, but the story is different. And your emotions only respond to the story. In fact, your emotions are the response to the story, not the feeling. And this is a big one that I used to face all the time talking. And some of you might have experienced this yourself. And that is people's facial expressions when you're talking to them. And they pull faces, and then you might have an emotional response to their faces because you've made a story up about it. So one that's very live for me is when I first started giving talks, I would see people frowning in the front row. And I'd be in a flap. I would lose my flow. I'd be all over the place. I'd start to sweat. I'd start to have a bit of light palpitation myself, thinking they don't like it. They don't like me. This is wrong. It's bad, all the rest of it. And then when I went to speak to such people, I found out that their frowns were that they were thinking. All they were doing was thinking. They were frowning because they were thinking. They weren't having a negative response at all. They were just processing. But I made up a different story in my head about what that frown meant. And I lived in the story, not in the truth. And this is true for many of us in our lives, is that we're not actually living in the truth of the feeling. We're living in the story that we've made up about it. The story of their judgment, the story of what we believe their thoughts about us are. It's just a story in our heads. We're the ones that repeat it and we're the ones that react to it. But the controller is here, not the feeling in the body. So it's really an important distinction to make the distinction between your feeling and your emotion, because a lot of the time, emotion is not reliable because it's based on the story. Now, there's a blindness here that's really important to understand our beginner space. And that is that when we experience emotion, it is time blind. And what I mean by that is it thinks it's going to be forever. So when we're sad and depressed, we think it's going to be forever. I've been there myself, depressed for years, thinking it's going to be forever. When we fall in love, we think it's going to be forever. When we're sad and processing our grief, processing our trauma, we think the pain and the emptiness will never go away. We think it's going to be forever. But it's not true. That's a blindness of that part of our system. And so the same applies to giving ourselves the beginner space. So when we're in a beginner space, it doesn't feel good. We feel clunky, we feel clumsy, we feel unskillful, we feel exposed, we feel unsure, we feel vulnerable. You ever gone to a new dance class? All those things are going on there. But our emotions are blind in that moment, and we think, oh, I'm going to feel like this forever. This dancing is not for me. This singing is not for me because I feel so uncomfortable doing it. But that feeling, that emotion is only there for the beginner space. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of you, none of you will remember, but you might if you've got children. Remember the moment before the child was able to sit up or walk. And right before the baby was able to sit up or walk, you see a buildup of tension and frustration and rage and outrage at the inability to do it. And they're bursting until they're able to do it. And then once they're able to do it, all of that charge and frustration and irritation and sadness about not being able to do it is gone. But you've got to be able to get to the end of the beginner phase. You've got to be able to carry and be okay with the uncomfortable feelings, knowing that they're not forever. It's really important because we have to give that to ourselves. Because otherwise, if we're used to just living in our emotions and believing them to be true, then we believe that we're going to feel these things forever. And that's just what it does. Whereas if you can get into your head, and the reason I mentioned being the baby and other classes that you may have done is so you can remember the beginner space and so you can remember what it was like to get to the other end of the beginner space. Because that is true for anything you apply yourself to. You're always going to have a bit of fear of failure, a bit of self-consciousness, vulnerability, exposure, clumsiness, clunkiness. All of these things are going to be true whenever you're doing something new, whether it's speaking up for the first time, asking somebody out, asking for the raise, standing your ground, whatever it might be, even at a basic level, going and introducing yourself to a stranger. That used to be the most difficult thing for me. So any of these things, we have to be able to give ourselves a beginner space, knowing, hey, my hands are shaking now and my voice is wobbling now, but it won't always be like that. And this is where, in a way, we kind of have to reparent ourselves in a way and apply a bit of self-care, a bit of compassion and understanding, because the map of mastery is there. And that is, as we looked in the map of the development of you in the body, you don't need to know how, you just need demonstration. And as long as you diligently apply yourself, you will achieve. But you have to be able to carry yourself through that period of unskillful, fearful frustration first. Does that make sense to everybody? Let me just look down the chat there. Okay. It feels like forever because it takes over your whole body like a seizure takes over. That's Jan. Yes, it does feel like forever. And the sensation in the body when it's happening is so big and it's so loud, you can't see the other end of it. And in a way, this is where there is a bit of mindset work done, where we need to be able to put our emotions in their place, which is they don't have to, through not ruling us. And this does require some self-talk, some positive self-talk. So here's a question for you all. Have you spoken negatively in your own mind to yourself? Have you criticized yourself for imperfect deeds that you've done? I'm going to take a guess and say that for all of you, that answer is yes. If you're willing to do that, and repeatedly, because I'll bet most of you have done it repeatedly. Oh, Sab saying, are you saying when we're in an emotional state, we're in fight or flight? You're jumping ahead, Sab, but we will get there. Yes, we're going to get into fight or flight in just a bit. It's a symptom of it for sure. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's look at this frozenness that can happen when we're overwhelmed with emotion at the time. And in those moments, that's when this technique, when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're in a forever zone, that's when to apply this technique. So I think we should probably just get on to it. I think that's enough background. Actually, that is not true. I've got one more, and I hope you don't mind this. There's an aspect here, and that is we have to talk about, at some point, we've got to talk about death, because one of the things that comes up is fear of death. You know, I'm going to die. They're going to see me and I'm going to die. And we'll get onto that later. I just want to mention in here that we can't talk about anxiety and fear without bringing in the fear of death and the fear that I'm going to be consumed, I'm going to be crushed, they're going to attack me, it's going to be over. And that can be consuming as well, and swallowing to the point that we end up taking no action. Okay, so the one of the final aspects of eliminating anxiety and stress, and from the mental aspect, is about the order of our relationships. Now, I know some of you might not have heard this idea before, but the order of our relationships is something that is out of whack, where we've got humans at the top of the hierarchy of meeting our needs and being responsible for keeping us safe and feeling at home. And when humans are at the top, that means human failure can cause our world to collapse. And so, in a way, we've got to change around the order of our relationships, because the order of relationships should be us, our world, and your relationship with spirit or the divine, whatever that is for you. These should be first. And if there are gaps in those, then we end up asking too much of other people. And we end up leaning in too much and pulling too much from them because of the emptiness we're experiencing through not landing at home in our body and in the world. And this technique is also going to help you shift the order of relationships so you can get yourself feeling safe in the body and in the world first. And if you can feel safe in your body and in the world, then other people are just a much smaller facet, rather than them being the dominant factor and the world not really even being a thing. I hope that made sense. Oh, there's another message from Maddie. Going to be left alone and die. Yes, aloneness is another one. Okay. Right. Let us go into something practical now. That is more than enough rabbiting on from me. I want to thank you all for sitting with me through that. Are you all ready for our first practical technique? I'm going to presume that's a yes. I've never done this where it's just like this, and all I get back from you guys is whatever you put in the chat, and otherwise I'm just speaking to the void here. If there's any test for my own anxiety, it's a setup like this. No biofeedback, speaking into the void, and not knowing whether anybody's liking me, not liking me, judging me, all the rest of it. Hopefully this is a bit of a testament to the method that I can be here and still do it and not be crumpled like the past me would have been. So I'm really, really pleased to get to this stage. This is where the meat of the event is, and really we're getting to the thing that I wanted to share. But we had to do a little bit of preamble to try and contextualize what I'm going to share with you. So we were born with two modes of perception available to us. Thank you, Sarosian. That's lovely and affirming. We were born with two modes of perception available to us, naturally and innately. But we only got taught one. And everybody is doing this one. And it means that we just gradually forget about the other one. And I want to use an example for this here. Studio, if we're there, can we have the ladies, please? Okay, have you all seen this before? This, they call it an optical illusion, but it's not actually an optical illusion. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it, but some of you might be seeing a rather maybe elegant and young lady looking over her right shoulder. But some other of you might be seeing what looks like an elderly lady in a big nose in a shawl, with a big nose and a shawl. She's not in a big nose. She's got a big nose and she's got a shawl. Can everybody see one or the other of those images? And can you all see both? Can anybody only see one of them? I need you to put it in the chat so that I know to point out the other one. Okay. So most people can see both of these. Not everybody, though. At first, some people can only see one. And what happens is they need a number of features of the other one to be shown before they can see it. So my son was a good example when I did this exercise with him. At first, he could only see the lady looking over her shoulder. And before he could see the older lady, before he could assemble the impression of her, I had to point out not just where her mouth was, but where her nose was and where her eyelids were. And then he could see her and then see both. In a way, our other mode of perception is like this. It's already there. It's not gone anywhere. We've just switched off to its features because of the habit of staying in one of them. But this isn't an optical illusion because this is a picture which is both things, but we can only assemble one impression at a time. All right, so Maddie can only see the young one. So maybe Maddie, after I've highlighted the old lady, can you see her now where actually it's difficult for me to point to it. It's easy when my son was in front of me. Oh, there we go. That's a great description from Sab. The young woman's necklace is the old woman's mouth. That is correct. And the old woman's nose is the young woman's chin. Hope that helps. And then the sort of yes, hopefully you can see it from there. Can you get that yet? I want to just go like this and point at it, but obviously you can't see what I'm pointing at. But it gets called an optical illusion, but it's not. Both are there, and it's just about the habit of looking that makes it. So when we were children, if we can just switch back to me now. Thank you. So when we were children, right from infancy, we had people going, look at this, oh, look at this, way, waving a little thing right in your face. And then you see all the adults and all the people around you, just in the same way that you see them walking and talking, you see them focusing in a particular way. And the way in which they look at things is the habit that we learn. But we weren't born able to focus. Focusing is something that we learned. We had another state of awareness available to us before then. And it is the simplest way of explaining the difference is I'm going to be sharing with you the difference between attention and awareness. And most people live in attention. And the Toltecs would say that that spell tells us everything we need to know about it because it is about attention. And so when you are focusing on things, and I think it was a Sab earlier that mentioned about fight or flight. When we are focusing, that is actually how a predator views the world. And the act of focusing and tracking is actually about tracking distance, direction, and threat. And most people aren't aware of it, but if you're walking around in focus on things, you're actually in low-level fight or flight at all times. The reason you don't feel it most of the time is because your body has already catalogued the fact that pavements aren't a threat, cars, unless they're moving, aren't a threat, lampposts aren't a threat, birds on the road aren't a threat. And this is all catalogued in us. So we can walk along seeing those things, thinking we're not in fight or flight, until maybe a group of people walk around the corner 200 meters ahead, and instantly your system goes into reactivity. I don't know if that sounds familiar to any of you. It certainly was a huge feature for much of my life. And I could have been thinking I was walking along at ease, but just this thing appearing in the distance, quite far away, would still affect my state of ease in that moment. And it's because actually there's a part of us as we're focusing, because even when you're walking along, your focus is shifting from thing to thing. It might be, lamppost, car, somebody's shoes, sign in the window. But we're always shifting our attention. We're shifting our focus from thing to thing to thing, almost like our eyes are holding on to something as we're going through the world. And that is a habit. And it's a habit that keeps us in that sense of threat seeking, even though we might not be aware of it. Now, you also might you remember we spoke earlier about how you don't know how you move your hands and all that sort of stuff. There's even more going on that's using up our awareness resource all the time to do with being in this fight or flight. And it's to do with this catalog of the world that we have. So right now, I want you to look around the room around you. So I'm looking around the studio that I'm in here, and I can see a wooden cabinet, and I can see a glass, I can see a floor and a carpet and things like that. So I'll bet you that right now, looking around the room, if you, in fact, I'm just going to hold some things up because that's going to make it easier because I don't know what you're looking at. So if I hold up this glass, you know right now what it would feel like to run your finger over that glass. You know how, whether it be smooth or rough, you know roughly what temperature it might be if it had been sitting there for a while. You also know what it would feel like on your tongue. You know what it would feel like to run your finger over a wooden spoon. Again, you know what it feels like on your tongue. And it's really interesting that I'll bet you for every single thing you can look around the room, you know by looking at it what it would feel like under your finger, temperature, texture. And you also know what every single thing in the room would feel like on your tongue. You can look at the carpet, the curtains, the glass, the table. Am I wrong? And the thing I want you to ask yourself is, how quick does that come to you? How quick is the texture of licking a wooden cabinet or a carpet? How quickly does it come? And it's more than a memory, isn't it? When you think about stroking a cold glass, it's more than a memory. It's what they call synesthetics. It's synesthesia. It's a blending of the senses in this catalog of the world I'm talking about. So we have a synesthetic catalog of the world that tells us what is threat and what isn't. But look at the speed at which you knew what the texture and the sensation on the tongue would be. When was the last time you licked wood or a carpet? And yet, how fresh is that synesthetic experience? Oh, I'll get to that bit, Sab. That question, it's coming in, it's good. So, this part of our awareness that has instantaneous access, so you don't have to think about the texture of a glass. All of its properties are there instantaneously for you and for anything else in the room that you look around, because it's not held in rational memory like, remembering what you had for dinner last Tuesday. It's probably more difficult for you to remember what you had for dinner last Tuesday than it is for you to remember the texture of what licking a cabinet feels like. And, when was the last time you licked a cabinet? Probably a long time ago. Because these are accessing different parts of our system. And so we can trick ourselves into thinking that we're not in fight or flight when we actually are, because the catalog that's describing the world is telling us cabinets are safe, chairs are safe, carpet's safe, all the rest of it. But it's still doing the threat assessment, even though you're not consciously aware of it. And so this method is going to help you just break that and short circuit it altogether. Okay. So we're going to need to do a bit of a practical exercise here to see the difference between attention and awareness. But one last point on this word of attention, which is a really interesting one, because the Toltecs mean that there is an actual tension produced when we focus. Now, that doesn't matter when I'm looking at the screen, but just say, for instance, I was around at a friend's house, and on the table, there was some chocolate, there were some sweets, there was some alcohol, there was some other indulgent substances, there was some gaming, there was all sorts of stuff on that table. At different points in my life, there would have been a tension between me and one of those things. And tension is a product of focusing. When we pay attention is when we experience tension. And there are a number of tenses that give rise to tension in us. There is past tension, past tense, things that happened in the past that still cause you tension now. There is future tension, future tense, fear of an uncertain future, fear of what's happening hundreds of miles away, fear of what's coming on the news, fear of the news of what happened in the next town. These are, that's a fear of what might happen next. That's future tense, future tension. And then there's present tension, which is much more about current news and world affairs and money in the bank and job security and things that are going on right now. These are present tensions. When our attention is scattered between the past, the future, and the horizon, then we have none left for us. And what that is our ability to apply intention, to be intense for what we're looking to pursue. And if you want to or aspire to being able to wield intention, you need some tension making capacity to do so. And if it's scattered to the past, the future, and the horizon, there's none left for you. So this method is about mastering your attention and reclaiming control of it so that you can take charge of your ability to be intense. I get accused of being intense sometimes. Okay, so it is a waste of our energy, absolutely, Nanette. It's completely a waste. It's the biggest waste is our attention. And actually, the second thing is that catalog of threat that's just running all the time, without us being aware of it. And then people are saying, "Where's my awareness? And where's my power? And where's my presence?" It's like it's absolutely tied up describing the world because you're sitting in fight or flight without being aware of it. And all of that amazing intensity of presence that you could turn into intention is scattered to the past, scattered to the future, and scattered to the horizon. And in a way, this is the shadow goal of bombarding you with scary distractions, to keep you in fight or flight, to keep you out of your own intensity. Because if you're like, over there, and I've got to go over there, and I'm scared about that, and that's happening, and the past was bad, and I'm crumpled from that, then where are you? For now, for your life, for your purpose, for your dreams, for your loved ones. Where are you? Been there myself most of my life. So it's not an accusation, it's a question. So, all right, talky. I am a talker. Okay, let's do it. Let's get on with the exercise and let's do a demonstration of the difference between the two. All right, you're all going to need to be able to get an object that you can hold if possible. Okay, is everybody able to get a pen or a cup or a coaster or something that's around that sort of size? You don't want it to be too big for this first exercise. In future, it won't matter, but we're in the beginner space here. So for the beginner space, you kind of need to have an object that you can hold. I'll give you all a minute to get one. Everyone got one? Okay. And so what I want you to do is dead simple. But you're going to have to manage your attention on this one because you're going to be listening to me. I don't want you to be looking at me for this, okay? Don't be looking at the screen. So turn to the side if you want so you're not distracted by it. I'll do the same, so we're all doing the same thing. Turn to the side. And I want you to hold the object up, whatever it is. I've got a pen. I like using a pen. But a cup, pen, anything like that is fine. And I want you to focus on it. Okay. So when I'm focusing on the pen and when you're focusing on whatever it is you're focusing on, what is important in your field of vision? All right, it's the thing you're focusing on, isn't it? That's the important thing. And it's very clear, isn't it? Whatever you're focusing on is very clear. It stands out compared to the rest. What happens to everything else when you're focusing on the object? Does everyone agree that everything else kind of blurs? Yeah? All blurs? Okay, so keep focusing on the object. While you're focusing on the object, everything else is equally unimportant, is it not? You could have your dog there. You could have your partner in the room. I could be standing in front of you. And while you are focusing on the object, I am equal to the floor, the wall, the chair, everything else while I'm focusing on the pen. Does everyone agree? Yeah? Okay, I'm going to presume there's agreement. And if not, you need to chat if you're in disagreement. But I'm going to presume agreement unless otherwise. So I've done this with lots of people, and this is about human perception, not interpretation. So actually, this is the same for everyone, regardless of your language, regardless of your belief, all the rest of it. So while you're focusing on that pen, everything else is equally unimportant. That is true equality. Okay? And what we're looking at here is this, the focus is your attention. The rest is awareness. All right, you can come back to the screen again now. We're going to go back to the exercise in a second. So I'm focused on the screen right now, but I'm aware of the room. I'm aware that there's things in it, but while I'm focused on the screen and on you guys, everything else is equally unimportant. This is vitally important to realize that our awareness experiences everything as equally unimportant until we make it important with the power of our attention, with the power of our focus. We are the ones, I am the one that is said out of all of the things in this room and all of the things that I could pay attention to conceptually from the lowest to the highest, I am saying that right now, this is the important thing. There it is. And everything else fades away into equal unimportance. This is enormous because this is what the manipulation of your attention is about. Because when you're focusing on something that somebody else wants you to pay attention to, that means that everything else fades away to equal unimportance, including your own hopes, dreams, aspirations, plans. And when you are paying attention to something else, they disappear and become equally unimportant, like the carpet and the walls and everything else, which isn't a flaw. It's a product of our awareness and our perception. And it's a rule that cannot be broken when we focus. And this is why you're getting that dangled distractions. Oh, look over here, look over here. Lots of noise, scary thing over here, lots of noise, scary thing over here. Because when you move to lock and look and zoom, everything else fades away to equal unimportance. You get to choose when that cost becomes too high. And this method is going to help you. Anyone got any questions about that before we try that again and go a little bit deeper? Any questions? Anyone disagree with everything going blurry? And does everyone notice what I mean by everything else becomes equal? When you're paying attention to something else, everything else becomes equal. Agreed? Okay. So this is maybe you can already see it, but this is how we short circuit our anxiety and stress, because it's based on perceived things that might be important or scary. And if we can use our natural awareness to reset everything to be equally unimportant until we choose what to pay attention to, then we have set ourselves free from that manipulation and from those habits. And it's dead simple. Okay. All right. So Susie, yes, makes sense with regards to manipulative people who try to change the focus onto something else. Absolutely. And watch what they're doing. They're steering you away and they're misdirecting you. And so watch yourself, because that's then how you can then end up off your own center. And it can be quite a trick, especially if you're coming to raise an important point that you have decided is important and you want to come and get them to make it important. Then their manipulation will be, hey, I know, they don't want to look and pay attention to the thing you're drawing attention to. So they try and raise something else. Oh, this is important, to try to steer you away from the thing that you were trying to make important. Okay. Now, I'm not saying attention is, Sab's asked, am I saying attention is too intense? No, it's not too intense. It has a place, and it's about knowing its place. And attention is really good. I mean, attention is about focus. If you want to focus and get things done, you need attention. There's no doubt about it. But we are living in times of attention deficit, where people are struggling with attention. And it's because, in a way, we're following the little dangled goads of distraction so rapidly that we're losing the ability to stay on a thing and to stay with it as long as we need to. And if it's appropriate, then that's fine. And other people might find that intense. But where attention does become too intense is it becomes too intense for us. It's too intense for us to live like that, to live in that all the time. No wonder we're fatigued and exhausted. And no wonder we're adrenally drained or taking the stimulants like coffee or, tobacco, whatever it might be, because our system thinks we need that extra kick to be able to handle all the threats and things that need to be done. There's just no respite there. It's too intense for us. So let's so this technique is dead simple, and it's really simple. And that is, it's about not focusing. But it's not about, and this is where we need to delve into it a bit, because we're not disassociating when we don't focus. So, and we'll need to go a little bit deeper into it for that to make that relevant. Just give us a moment. Let's delve into it a bit more. So let's do the experiment again. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the object. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you, and this is where it gets tricky, I want you to try to keep your eyes exactly as they are when you're focusing on the object, but then I want you to lower your arm so the object isn't there. And see if you can hold your eyes like that for a few moments. All right, then blink your eyes, let them return to normal. And this is where I need some interactivity, some feedback. How was that for you? What did you notice? And was it difficult for your eyes? Were they trying to focus when I got you to lower the object, whatever it might be? How was it? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Oh, Nanette felt her breath deepening. Yeah, we're going to get there in a second. Yes. What else? Anyone notice? Did anyone else notice that? A shift in your breath almost instantly? And what else did you notice maybe happened quickly there? We're going to do it again. Don't worry. We'll do it a few times. We're going to dip in and out to see what else we can pick out of it. So don't worry. There's no getting it wrong here. There's no failure here. All right. Yes, Rosie. Yeah, it's very difficult that you're going both sides. Yes. Now, that's going to happen. Your eyes are going to try and snap because they're a muscle and they're habituated to triangulating. And we're asking them to not triangulate. So you're actually working a muscle. Yes, Maddie's finding it really hard. It is difficult at first. The good news is you were born doing this, right? You're literally born doing it. This is actually our default perception. And we've just been habituated into learned perception. But this is actually the natural default one. When attention fails, awareness remains. Oh, Susie noticed that she felt aware of everything, but her focus kept going towards internal dialogue. Beautiful. Anyone else notice an increase in your awareness of things. Anyone feel more centered already just with a few seconds in it? Anyone else notice yourself being just more present and aware of being in the middle of your world rather than projected out into it somehow? And just instantly focus on the background. Yes, Maddie, that's a habit. So this is it. Don't worry if your eyes zap to focus. Don't worry if you go cross-eyed. Don't worry if your eyes tear up and well. Don't worry if any of this happens. This is completely normal. We're just retraining a muscle. That's all. Okay. Jan said, I like it because it's relaxing, but felt bad about doing it because people say you look insane, not focused on anything. I love it, Jan. Look at how quickly self-consciousness comes up. And you're right. The first thing you think is, I'm going to look mental. People are going to think I'm on something. And that's our programming and conditioning. Now, at first, when this technique is new to you, it will be obvious to others you're doing something. But with practice, you can dip in and out of this in seconds without people being able to even notice that you have actually just completely reset your nervous system. Because let's do it again. And this time, we're going to we're going to try it another way because it can be hard to work on the eyes when we're looking on something and then take it away. So we're going to start with a closed eye position this time. And we're going to open our eyes to what some people would call a soft gaze, where you're not really looking at anything. And in a way, remember, we want our eyes to almost go like this instead of like that. And so some of you might get to the stage where you're actually seeing two images. So you'll actually be able to separate the homogenization of the brain. So you'll get the two distinct images from both eyes. If you're doing that, it's going well. So self-consciousness comes up. Don't worry about that. That will happen at first, and it will change the more you experience the benefits of being in awareness rather than in attention. So we already noticed somebody saying they felt aware of everything, and somebody else already noticing an impact on their breathing. We're going to do it from a closed eye start, and then we're just going to explore what it's like to stay in there, recognizing that the real battle at the minute is going to be with eyes to stop them from focusing. Okay, that is the first challenge. Now, to help with that, I'm going to suggest a type of breathing for you, just to make it easier at first. And some of you will prefer what I call the vertical breath, which is to imagine. So if I go into my soft gaze now, my eyes are wanting to jump out and grab the world. So to help them stay here, I'm going to imagine I'm breathing in through the crown and breathe in through the top of my head and down into my body, and then back up that way. So we're getting into seeing if we can get into a vertical breath that helps us stay present in this technique. Because normally our breath is out there, following the eyes, focusing. So we're going to try a vertical breath. And if vertical doesn't work for some of you, imagine you're breathing into your back horizontally. So normally we're breathing into the front, chest left, belly left, nose, all the rest of it. Imagine instead it's coming into your back. So you can feel the expansion at the back of the rib cage, the back of the kidneys. You feel your garment and the back of your chair moving in response to you breathing with a different focal point. So we're going to close our eyes for a moment. Take a few easy breaths. No one's looking. No one's judging. And if there's a part of you that's concerned that they are, that's our habit self that's afraid of always being on show. And we can welcome that here. We're just going to breathe. And then we're going to gently allow our eyes to come open to the soft gaze. And if you have a few blinks, let your eyes return to normal focus. What did anybody notice that time? What was happening in your body? And what was happening inside? Or just any comments, really? And I'm going to ask one very specific question. I'm going to ask what happened to your face. Can anyone tell me what happened to their face when they tried this? And if you're not sure, try it again. Jump into the technique now and tell me what happens to your face as you switch from attention to awareness or attempted awareness. All of my past history with this technique for handling my own anxiety and nerves coming to the fore right now as I sit here in a room by myself, staring into a screen, seeing only myself and no words coming on the screen. Would any of you agree that your face relaxes when you do it? Try it again. Even now, if you go from focusing to getting rid of the sort of focus, do you notice a shift in your face? What used to be an inner critic voice is now an inner positive, thinking that you're all loving the awareness experiment so much that you're just sitting in it, bathing in it. Something's beeping. It's not you guys. Let's see. Oh, there are messages. Mine just hasn't updated. I'm sorry. My thing is not updating. Right, I have to scroll. There you go. This is my thing, right? I like it because it's relaxing but feel bad. Yep. I know it's my brain kept wanting to focus. Yes, Susie, you found that easier. Excellent. Top of the back, just let go. Wonderful, peaceful, in the moment. Okay, you become more aware of the tensions in the body. So I'm realizing I'm reading these out too quickly for those who might not see these comments in future. We're having comments here that is finding it easier and a struggle here with Susie, who found that her brain kept wanting to focus. Don't worry, Susie, we're about to give your brain something to do for the next step. So that little obstacle is going to be in hand. So you find the breathing help. The breathing really is an important part of it because we're so habitually forward loaded into this fight or flight triangle in front of us, both for breath, focus, attention, intensity. It's all in this sort of triangle here. And we're just opening that up right now with this. So Jan commented that the top of her back just let go instantly. Yes, the tension that was there, it's just gone, isn't it? Warren, very peaceful. Sorosian felt completely in the moment. Maddie, definitely easier with the breath, but needs practice. Yes, it does. We're in the beginner space. It's okay. Oh, I like what Annette said. Nanette, sorry. Face goes to natural. Ooh, I like that. Face goes to natural. Yes. Susie, muscles relax into a slight smile. Sorosian, not just the face, the whole body and grounded. Face drops. Sab, yeah, I look dumber. And Jan, yeah, the face drops, tongue goes to the roof of my mouth, and you feel really glad. Wow. I know, I'm sorry about that notification. That was the studio telling me, oi, you nutter. There are comments there. You're just not scrolling. See the habits of having a studio. It's useful having somebody to help. Oh, it's so wonderful to hear that you're getting these little noticings, and we've spent seconds practicing seconds, and instantly, whole body grounded, feeling centered, feeling in the now, right here. Jaw relaxes, face relaxes, shoulder relaxes. How many hours practice did that take? I mean, it's right there and available, because what happens is our entire nervous system follows the attention story, the tension story. And when you get rid of the tension, yeah, sorry about the sound notifications. When you get rid of the cause of tension, which is focusing, there's no tension in the body. It's gone instantly, right there. It's impossible for it to be there. It will dissolve. And what's happening in the face is really important, because that's actually telling you how busy you are all the time. Because our face is sending off a thing called cues, CUES, and they are our threat management system and our threat control system here. And so you might have thought you were relaxed before. Yeah, I'm sitting here relaxed. No, you're not. You're sending off cues all the time. Awareness is relaxed. Attention sends a story. And so we all have cues in our face sending off the story, I'm safe, I'm not scary, I'm a nice person, or the other way around. I want to be scary. I want to be perceived as scary. I'm going to swagger and I'm going to send off cues that are going to try and intimidate people. I'm going to pull a hard face. We're sending off cues all the time. And, we might send off cues that we don't want approached, or cues that we do want approached, or cues that we're safe, cues that we're afraid, or whatever. And everybody's reading them all the time. And so the reason I'm mentioning that is to go back to the person that said, I think it was Jan that said, everyone thinks you're going to look like you're insane. That's actually not true. What happens is you become an unknown. They don't know what you are at that point when you send off no cues. I invite you to try it next time. I've done this in boardroom meetings of companies and walking through gangs of people and all the rest of it. And when you send off no cues, it's hilarious to watch them flap. And the tables turn from me being the one that was flapping to them. And it's not because I'm trying to make them flap. I'm just getting centered. I'm just trying to manage my anxiety. I'm just trying to open up my perception to awareness. But the lack of sending out cues means that other people are trying to read you to establish where you are in their power hierarchy, where you are in their ability to manipulate you, or their ability to control and overpower you. When you change that message, they do not know what to do. Why is my phone beeping so much? I mean, I'm not even that popular normally. Right, I'm just going to mute that now, because I think the studio, we've dealt with everything. Here we go. I'm going to flight mode that. Okay, and so the notification sounds are hopefully gone now and not going to distract you anymore. So cues are a vital part of this to help because your mind is like the self-conscious part of mind that is wanting to control your image and to control other people's perception of you. That's the part that decides what your facial expressions are going to be. It's deciding, hey, I want to manage these people's perception, and so I'm going to have this face sort of thing. If we let go of that completely and drop into our awareness, I actually teach this technique in a workshop called Walking Between Worlds, because we're walking between worlds at that point. We're walking between the world that we were in into the one that we were born in, and then from there into the one that we want to be in. And it does, yes, it shows you how much people are working to get our attention. It's a competition for attention out there. It really is. And the reason for that is people looking for their power in the group. And when we let go of those games, it's gone. Now, I mentioned in the blurb for this event that this technique is not mine. I learned it from the Toltecs as a method of learning to see again. And that is to see the energy of the universe sort of thing. But it's taught all over the world. In the Native American tradition, this is taught as a stalking technique for hunters, because they send off no cues to the animals. You go walking through the woods and the birds and the animals are all running away because of the cues you're sending off with your threat-seeking attention. Animals feel the weight of human attention. And when you withdraw the weight of it, you become an animal like them, and they're more welcoming of you in the space. In India, it was taught as an invisibility technique. And that's because if you master it, when you send off 0 cues, it is honestly like people cannot see you. And I had it recently with a retreat I ran. One of the members is here. She might even remember it. I'm not sure if she knew it. But I was in this technique just for myself in the space that we were in to enjoy the space and my awareness. And folk were looking for me that had walked right past me because they didn't see me. I wasn't visible. I was just sending off no cues. And I'm not saying this is a goal to become invisible. I'm just sharing the bemusement of how this technique is turned up around the world for different purposes. In Zen Buddhism, it's taught as an open-eyed meditation technique. And the Toltecs teach it as a way of learning to see energy in the world. Because through the other aspect of our awareness, we break through in other ways. But I'm teaching it to you as a natural mode of perceiving. No fancy goals other than, hey, look, we forgot that we can reset our nervous system in a breath. Dead simple. But there's one other aspect I want to deal with in our little practice session here that is an important part that deals with what Susie was talking about, which is, where is it now? Oh yes, the wandering mind, where the attention then wants to go on the internal dialogue, or the mind starts wandering looking for fear or something. So we need to give the mind something to do. So for this, we're going to have another little concept here. What I want you to do is I want you to focus on a few different things in the room around you and lock in on one, stay there for a few seconds, and then move on to something else. It really doesn't matter what they are. Just let's do 3 to 5 things. I'm going to focus on one. There's one thing. There's another. Oh, there's another. There's another. And you guys can be my last. Okay. Now, it's not just our head and our eyes that move when we focus and pay attention. Something else moves. I want you to, can you hold up the object again, please, and focus on that one? So I'm going to do it as well. So when you're focusing on the object, it's almost like a part of you is zoomed in on it, isn't it? It's like, so in this case, I've got a Sharpie, no advertising intended. And it's like I can zoom in on the detail and the nuance of it. I can zoom in on the cap, on the text, the small print. You know, I can wander around the edges of the pen. Has everyone noticed that it's like it zooms in as we focus? It's like as it becomes more important, it becomes up in like a higher level of detail to the things which have fallen into the equality of awareness. And this is a part of mind that one of my teachers called the dweller. And she called it the dweller because it dwells on things. And it can be an object. It can be an idea. It can be an event, past, present, or future. It can be a person. This part of our attention dwells on things. And it gets scattered because of continuing to dwell on points of tension that are no longer serving us. And the thing that makes this technique not dissociative, which some people would say it is if you suddenly went into like a non-focused gaze, maybe you're dissociating. No, because what we're going to do is we're retracting the dweller consciously. When we dissociate, the dweller starts to go into the internal dialogue for something to look at, or we maybe go off into a little fantasy world, a little magic world to not be in the situation around us. Instead, what we're looking to do is anchor the dweller where it belongs, which is here, behind the eyes. not in them, behind them. We have a beautiful name for this part of the skull, don't we? What's it called? The dweller belongs in the temple. And what we're doing here is what we're going to add next to the technique is when you've got that part that is, so the eyes want to focus, but the dweller is looking to dwell. It wants something to rest on, and it's going to keep looking for it unless we give it something. So we're going to give it something. The absolute center of your head, the center of your skull, in alignment with the rest of the body and the breath that we're doing in this method to become present, to bring ourselves here. In a way, this is very, very much pulling ourselves together. Pull yourself together. This is pulling ourselves together, where we're retracting the tension that we've scattered to the horizon to add to our intention and intensity. We're clawing it from the past and to the future. And then for the little wandering, untrained dweller in the now, come home to the temple. Add that to the breath, and you have a mechanism that can keep you rooted here until you choose to move from your center. Let's give that a go now. Let's go side on and let's give it a go. So I'm going to go from closed eye into open eye because I now find that easier. But now, your dweller is the one that's normally trying to get your eyes to focus. So we're going to combine the breath either in the back or down the crown, which is going to keep us here, with the notion of this idea of retracting the dweller to the temple where it belongs. And then we choose when to send it out as an emissary to dwell on something that we choose is important in the infinite field of equal unimportance around us. So, got my eyes closed. Get my breathing settled in. And then you don't need to know how to do this with the dweller. You don't even need to know what it is. As long as you notice that your focusing part did seem to project or dwell, and when I got you to move around the objects in the room, that you gained some awareness that there was something else moving other than eyes there, then you're going to be able to do this because it's natural. We were born with this. So eyes closed, lock in the breathing. Gently allow the eyes to come open to the soft gaze, but keeping the dweller behind the eyes. And then blink and reset your eyes. I'm not sure it's my imagination, but it's almost like I can feel your increased presence in the field. Oh, Jan said you can feel it going there to sit there by itself. Yes, absolutely. Oh, Sab poses the question, who are we? Absolutely. Who am I? Do you know what? I actually don't know. Somebody told me that I should be called Darren, and I started responding to it. But you know what? I still don't know what this is. Still don't know what it is. Got lots of stories that people have told me, but don't know what it is. Oh, tingling. Yes, Susie. Yes, beautiful. Tingling. Because you're coming home to the sensations in the body that aren't frayed and frozen and frantic. Ah, beautiful. Oh, the intensity was increasing of the tingling or of your presence. Because you're going to start to feel the size and weight of your own presence as you pull yourself together. Instant peace, Nanette. That is it. Instant peace. One breath away. Now, I would love to be able to do extended practice with you, but I'm conscious of our time. I'm conscious of your evening. I'm conscious I've left the kids on the screen. Yet more present. Beautiful, beautiful. If you've noticed anything, any gain whatsoever, who would have thought that even the little gain that you got could be achieved by something so simple? I mean, I could have just started the session and be over in 5 minutes. Right, guys, don't focus. See ya. Job done. But there's more to it than that. It is that simple. It is that simple. But there is more to it than that because we are more complex than that. Okay, Susie, just a bit more intense feeling of tingling and made you a bit tearful. Yes, that's what we want. Tears of relief, tears of release, tears of hope and possibility that something is within reach that you can do. It's not some big complex fancy thing. You don't have to go and do some big course and learn all these complex things and be able to dance and move your fingers in a particular way. It's right there. It's so accessible. Enjoy the relief. Let yourself cry. Be in the grief and enjoy the relief of the grief. Joyful. Oh, you're such a feeling contribution to this, Susie. That's wonderful. Thank you for your contribution. Wonderful. Oh, nativity back for Christmas. Well, getting your nativity back is a bit more work, but this is certainly one of the most important keys towards it. This key will reconnect you to all the native truths that lie within you. It will set you free from the manipulation of others who are seeking to dangle and get your attention. You can defeat the screen with this technique because the screen is as unimportant as everything else. And it's a phenomenal thing to do, to watch how the emanations of the screen try to catch your attention with this technique. You can use it for rage. You can use it for any situation. I mastered this technique with a bully at work. I'd used it for years. I mean, I'll be honest. I used to work in Edinburgh. I had a 20-minute walk to work, crossing roads and paths. And as I got really good at this, I would go to work in this state, crossing roads, passing people, and I never had an incident because your awareness tells you when there's a threat and a problem, and our attention thinks it needs to pay attention to know, but your awareness already knows, and it's actually faster. Because have you ever gone to step out on a street, but then you got that feeling not to, and a car went by that your attention missed, but your awareness got? And we've done tests with men in physical combat at the men's events, and we've tested them to encounter each other in attention and in awareness. Every single person is faster in awareness than they are attention, even though it seems counterintuitive, and your attention will defiantly oppose me, saying, that's not true. Focusing is faster. It's not. You've got to go, Maddie. No problem. That's because it's like 5 o'clock in the morning there. Maddie's joined us from Australia, so thank you. Yeah, all you're going to miss, Maddie, you'll get it on the replay, and that is I'm going to do a few more consequences of what happens if we don't do this, and delve a little bit more into some of these other benefits you get, because this can be applied to so many things. And what I realized in the past was I made the mistake of teaching it generically as a seeing technique, and then noticing people were not applying it in their everyday lives. And so this is where I thought, let's zoom in on something: anxiety and stress. But I mastered it with a bully who I worked with when I first moved to England, and he was bigger than me. So I'm not a small guy. I'm like 6'2". This guy was a 6'4" rugby player, and he hated the fact that the company had headhunted me from my previous job. He hated it. Now, I was no threat to him. He was better at what he did than the job. I was looking to him to learn, and he used to scream at me. He used to come up to the desk, lean in on the desk, and I'm not going to give you the expletives, but he would go right to my face and scream, "You stupid effing jock licking this, blah, 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 blah. What the fuck are you doing here?" Blah, blah. And he'd be right like this close to my face, screaming in this big face. And I would go home crying. I'd go crying, contracted. Nobody in the office did anything to help. Everybody just sat around for ages. And this went on for ages until I brought my technique to bear. And it got to the stage that he just stopped because he just didn't know how to deal with my cues or the absence of them. But he was like right here. The charge in the field was huge. And this is another thing where this technique comes in really handy, is when there's a lot of charge and intensity in the field and your fight or flight is rising to respond with it. Panic might be rising, fear might be rising. When you feel that whipping you up in the field, soft gaze, it's gone. It's not important. And like I say, I've had somebody screaming in rage right this close, and he became nothing to me. Now, I'm not saying he became nothing, but I'm saying for me to manage and make new choices and to take care of myself in that situation of intensity, I didn't care if he thought I looked a little bit crazy, because actually that was self-care at that point. And that was actually the company at the boardroom. I started doing this in the boardroom with them because they were all annoying me because they all let it happen. And I just sit there in the soft gaze and they'd all be like, flapping, but I'd still contribute from the state. I'd add to the conversation and all the rest of it, but I wouldn't pay attention to any of them. It was brilliant, but I missed nothing because I was in awareness. So this technique, most meditation techniques you get are for when you're on your own, sitting with your eyes closed, and it's all lovely and you can feel lovely. And that's great until you go out, because you don't spend your life with your eyes closed. It's lovely to meditate with closed eyes, and there's lots of benefits to it. And I champion all of them. And I've got a lot to say of the benefits for a closed eye meditation process. But this, in truth, is an open-eyed meditative process, which isn't really a meditation. It's just trying to reset to our natural perception. But it's open-eyed, and it's for use in your daily life. It's for walking down the street. It's for on the bus. It's for in the queue. These are the places to practice it, so that when you really need it in a situation of intensity, you've got it. Dweller at home, centered, relaxed. Yeah, Susie, you get caught up in other people's angry emotions. So Susie just said, I often get caught up in other people's angry emotions. Me too. Me too. That is an enormous issue. And this is where this technique is king. Absolutely. You will not get anything, you will not find a technique that is faster at being able to help you be at ease in an intense situation, even violent. And this can reset you and help you choose. It's not going to change the situation, but it will help you get a moment of relief to hopefully make a new choice. And that's as much as any of us can ask for, is to get out of habitual reacting and into a moment's respite to hopefully make a new choice and move in a new direction. And my experience with this technique is it will do that. It can give that to you, but you do need to put practice in moments by yourself. But again, you don't have to isolate yourself to do it. Do it on the bus. I was going to say do it in the car there. Don't do it when you're driving, not until you've practiced it for a long, long time. I don't think I did that for you until I've done it for years. But practice it. And then when you need it, it will be there for you. And yes, the Rosian scene, basically you stop feeding others with your energy. Absolutely. And you take charge of it as well. And you're not dissociating from them. You are getting centered. You're coming, you're arriving. It's actually a massive benefit, and you're more able and equipped to deal with all the situations in your life. And of course, focus and attention are still going to be there. They're there for us to get things done and deal with the world. But now you have another option available to you. You don't have to be in that all the time. You can give yourself a break. And the next thing, my nervous system is already happy. That's wonderful to hear. That was my goal here, that you were able to get a sense of how this can rapidly reset the nervous system in such an easily accessible way that, for doubt, if you've still got doubts in your inner dialogue, just think, we did seconds of practice here, and every one of you mentioned some moment of respite or relief. A little bit more and you can experience total relief. And expand yourself in that state as you more practice in awareness. Your ability to make expanded choices and new choices rapidly, faster than rational thought, at the speed of intuition, will come through much, much more cleanly and clearly, and in a way that you will find rewarding and nourishing and empowering. And what Sorosian said, taking back and standing in your own power, which actually doesn't even have to control you either. Exactly. Exactly. You're not even controlling yourself when you're doing it. You're doing a total reset, non-performance. You're not performing for anyone, even yourself. You're just resetting. You know, it's wonderful. I'm really glad you've all had a good experience with that there. So I want to talk about consequences. And I also want to use one last optical illusion for you all. And so, studio, can we have the Troxler effect, please? And I think after the exercise, you guys are going to appreciate this. Okay, so this is one of these optical illusions. And what you've got to do on this one is to focus on the green dot. So I'll focus on the green dot. I'm going to do that for a few moments. Okay, while you're focusing on the green dot, everyone, what is happening to the yellow dots? All right, I'm going to give it a minute or two for you guys to get some comments in on that. Okay, top of my drink. I'll just a moment. Okay, they're disappearing. That's right. Okay, they're flickering in and out. Yes. All right. Isn't that weird? Okay, this is, they call it the Troxler effect, and I love it because it is telling us a lot about our perception. So, what Troxler demonstrates is that when there are static points in a moving field, the brain filters them out. And it does it by itself. They'll disappear and appear of their own volition. You're not in control of it when they disappear and when they pop back. That is exactly the same mechanism. Have you all had a thought pop out of your head and you forget and it just pops back into your head again? You know, you had something mountain plan and then it suddenly disappeared. And then all of a sudden it came back and you went, oh yeah, I remember. And it just came out of nowhere. That's actually the Troxler effect in the brain. The rest of your world was moving, but the point of the plan that you had to do was an unmoving point. And so it disappeared temporarily. Now I want you to imagine that those yellow dots are your felt sense of connection to all things, your at homeness in the world. All right, let's come back to the studio. That's very fine now with that. Let's imagine now those yellow dots are your purpose, your connection to all things, your sense of at homeness in the world, your sense of righteous being. These have been present your whole life, but because they are unmoving, then in a moving field, they disappear. That's how people forget things which are fundamental truths about themselves and their own beingness. It's because those things which are fundamental are unmoving in a very busy moving field. And the Troxler effect means that the brain will filter them out and just pop them back periodically. Now, what happens when we have aha moments, realizations, alignment moments, oneness experiences, all that's happening is we've got ourselves into an alignment where the noise of the normal distracting moving field is less, which allows things which were already fundamentally true to re-reveal themselves to you for a moment. And using this technique to help reset the moving field, to help reset what you're allowing to move, allows some of these Troxler points to re-emerge within you, like the sense of peace and groundedness and being here. Because actually, those are fundamental in us. They really are. The sense of easy being and at home in our body is actually a fundamental part of how we arrived in the world. We learned to not be at home in our body. We learned to be unsafe in our body and to not trust it. But we weren't born that way. And we just got caught up and wrapped up in reacting to the moving field, that these other points of fundamental truth just disappear as if they're not there. But they are there. They've not gone anywhere. And it's a bit like the optical illusion with the ladies again. You can only look at one at a time. You can't assemble both impressions of the ladies at the same time in that optical illusion. You do one at a time. And in the same way with this, you can be in attention or awareness. You can't be in both. There are benefits to being in attention that you can't get in awareness, but there are benefits you can get in awareness that you can't get in an attention. And so offering this up to you in the application of anxiety and stress is just one application. But this technique has so many other benefits. I just yearn for you to practice and have those quiet smiles of realization, joy, tears, ease, at homeness, vastness, weighty presence, because all of you have all of those things in you. And my aspiration in sharing this with you is for you to be able to enjoy that, because it's naturally and inherently yours. We've just been bombarded by so much noise, taking us away with attention. Come away from your center. Come away from your center. Be afraid of this. Be afraid of that. Be afraid of them. Be afraid of that. Be afraid of this. It's a busy old game, isn't it? Tiring. It's tiring. They're going to keep doing that. That's what they do, and other people are going to keep competing for your attention as well. It's how the world is. We can't stop that, but we can give ourselves a break, a proper break with this method. Yeah. That's Susie. Absolute gold. Susie just said, when I looked at the green dot in awareness, the yellow dots didn't disappear. Yes. Exactly the point. That's exactly the point. The things which had disappeared from your attention, which are fundamental to your beingness, start to reappear. And that's why I used to call this workshop, when I ran it, walking between worlds, because things start to appear that didn't seem like they were in your world before, but you might have heard stories of them. You might have had tales of them. You had tales of people seeing or feeling things that you thought were beyond you. No, they're right there. They haven't gone anywhere. A bit like the image of the two ladies. The other image is there. We just haven't dropped our awareness into it, dropped our consciousness into our awareness instead of our attention. Glorious input. Thank you. That's lovely. So that's a benefit. The Troxler, I hope you can see the enormity of what Troxler tells us, because just like the frame rate thing, which is not a feature of the eyes, it's a feature of the brain, Troxler is a feature of the brain as well. And so in a way, with this technique, we are working to get more out of our brain's natural capacity to be present and aware of what is here. And the more we focus on something, the more everything else starts to collapse and disappear. At first, only a little bit, but the longer you stay on one thing, the more everything else starts to disappear. That's no way to live your life when you've got a purpose that might be disappearing there, is it? So that's one of the consequences of not taking action here. And it is the potential for a life unlived. the potential for feeling like your life is unlived. I felt like that for most of my life, that I was living quarter of the life that was my potential, because I was huddling, hiding in fear from the world and from myself. It's such a high cost that if sharing this technique would give you 5 seconds less of that kind of withdrawn suffering, then it's time well spent, if you ask me. You know, another aspect is, and I think somebody mentioned it in the comments, and that is, it's like, if you don't occupy your space and your opportunity of what you do with your tension and your dweller, then you're going to be feeding somebody else's, because you're going to be following the one that's goaded you. And it's like, if you're not living your life story, you're going to be living somebody else's. Even if you're reacting against what they're doing, you're still caught up in their story, rather than really locking into what yours is. So the cost could be our whole story if we don't act on this. And here's the big one for me, and that is, there's a geometry book that I once read about mosaic designs in fancy places like, the example was in mosques, actually, was about these massive murals that are made of tiles that are geometric in mosques. And it was talking about how precise they have to be, that if, when you're doing a pattern, one of the early tiles is off position, or if it's smaller than it needs to be, then the whole pattern gets thrown off. The rest of the pattern isn't what it should or could be. And so in a way, I'm sharing this in my yearning and my imploring of you to say, the pattern of life needs you to be occupying your space for it to be complete, for it to be the beautiful geometry that it can be, the beautiful geometry of lives, and the pattern and the tapestry of our interactions and our creativities. That pattern is thrown off by our contractions and by our withdrawals and by our avoidances and our hiding from our fear and our anxiety and our stress. And as I said at the beginning, I can't change the situations you're facing, but I know life never, ever asks more of us than we are able to respond to. It might feel like it's a straw that's going to break the camel's back. It might feel like you're about to explode and burst. That's how growth happens. And in a way, I like to view the growing of awareness and beingness as a bit like the delivery of a baby. And that is the first period of labor. Not that I've done it, but I've witnessed it 4 times. And it is, the first stage is, oh, no, it's uncomfortable. Oh, no, it really hurts. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. No, I don't want it. I can't do it. No, I don't want it. I can't do it. I can't do it. No, I don't want it. I can't do it. Oh, I can do it. Poof, life takes over at that point. And so this is my final point, is the parts of you that will resist this, the habituated parts that want to stay in control, thinking, I still know better. I've been looking after us for our whole lives. I still know better. The attention voice. In a way, to change that, there will be resistance within you. And that's natural. And so I want you to look at where in your body resistance comes naturally before release and relief and change. And that is grief and tears. Most people don't want to cry, and at first it's resistance. Oh, resist. Don't want to resist. Breakthrough, release, relief. Being sick. Nobody wants to be sick, but the body's saying, I've got something I need to get rid of here. And we resistance, tension, resistance. Release, relief. Going to the toilet. Somebody's going for a difficult poo. Resistance, release, relief. That chart in the body, which is everywhere in the body, of resistance and tension before release and relief, is part of the map of the body. So if you're experiencing resistance and tension in the approach to this, know that that's normal. And that could be just, and even no matter how intense it is, if anyone has seen a baby before it sits up or before it stands up, the moment before, the times before are when it's the most tense, the most intense, the most resistance before relief and release. And so please expect that from yourselves in the beginner space here. Expect a bit of resistance from the habit of attention that wants to say, I know how to stay in charge. Expect some tension as it wants to lock in and focus and habit. Expect those things. But then know that on the other side, there's the relief and release that you tasted in the few moments that we dropped into the exercise here today. Yes, Rosian, it's a whole new argument of nature and nurture. Absolutely. Absolutely. And in a way, what this also does is it gives us direct access to the nature that is inherent that bypasses the impact of the nurture field temporarily. In fact, it's not even temporary. As long as you're in awareness, those impacts of the nurture field aren't even there. They're not important, but you're still here in beingness. You know, so this is a way actually we can flip between nurture and nature. Here's the character that nurture produced. Hi, I'm Darren. I'm the result of all my social conditioning and all the rest of it, and I don't always perform as well as I want to in many situations, and hey, I wish I could be better at a whole bunch of other things. That is the nurture field. The nature field, I don't know who or what this is. There's stuff coming through it that I don't even know where it came from. But hey, I'm on the journey of finding out. Oh, Susie is saying, I did feel a bit of anxiety as I held awareness, like jumping off a cliff. Yes. The cliff is from the tininess of attention into the vastness, the ocean of awareness. Because attention is a small focused triangle. Awareness is 360 degrees. That's a lot more. A lot more. And please be kind to yourself in this, Susie. Practice by yourself first. Give it to yourself first. Take on the screen, you know. Maybe you and hubby are sitting watching TV or something like that at night and you lock into this. And suddenly you feel the difference of him being locked on the TV while you're free. It's like, whoa, look how entranced he is. Wow, I'm really aware of that now. And then join him again. Oh, yeah, this is good. Yeah, look at this. We're both in it together. Boom, I can get out of it. Wow. You know? And then doing the cooking, waiting for the kettle, anything like that. Seriously, any little minutiae moments, standing in a queue. You don't even need to be experiencing tension in the moment to do it, just to get the practice in. So I think, look at that. We're approaching the 2-hour mark. And I said to Stevie, it's going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours sort of thing. So what a perfect thing that we're approaching 2 hours and it's naturally drawing to a close, because there is a lot more I could say and there's a lot more we can do. But actually, a lot of it's better after you've gone and done some practice and things like that. I wasn't sure how to follow on from this. As I said to you all beforehand, I wasn't planning on trying to sell you something at the end of this. The goal was to give you something that works and could bring relief at a time when I feel like many of us could benefit from that. You know, it's a gift in that respect and an offering. But I'm aware that sometimes hand-holding and support is of benefit. And I don't know what best would suit if people were interested in that. So I'd be happy to offer something like a call group or something like a workshop for people to attend, but it's kind of going to be based on what sort of needs and support would work for you all. Or nothing. Maybe what we've covered is enough and it's fine to go and practice. I'm just aware that I don't want to send people off without any follow-up support, but I also don't want to say, I don't want to turn this into some kind of, now you've had the taster, buy the thing. So I'm going to leave it at that. If anybody is interested in something like a support call group, or they need some one-to-one support, or if you just want to connect and unpack, or possibly come along to a live event, I will be doing this technique live for the purpose of ancestral connection work in May next year. You'll see that event on the website, nativeintelligence.co.uk events. You can have a look there, and that'll be a mix of this technique, but with the goal of how we connect with the ancestors that way, which is another aspect of healing that can help us feel really at home. But I've seen some gratitude come from you guys. I certainly I'm really grateful you've shown up. I'm really grateful you've come, considering it was short notice. I have not put anything online for 2 years now, at least. So I'm a bit of a random nobody out in the field these days without much reach or momentum. So I'm really grateful that you have heard the call, shown the interest. Some of you, most of you know me. I'm so grateful that you've come along and helped me bring this out, because I can't do it to the void. It's great to have this connection here, and maybe I can share this on with others and they can benefit from your sharing and from your vulnerability and honesty in here too. So thank you all very much. I'm going to give one more moment for any questions or comments. Nanette would love a second round. Well, we'll chat about that as to how that could happen. We could do another follow-up workshop if people were interested, just for you lot, or maybe we can do something together. Many years ago. So it's funny that, because I saw your name and I wasn't sure if I actually knew you or not. I love the fact that so many of you are on here are people that I know. It means a lot to me. And it also means that it feels lovely for me to be able to share something that I know I've shared with strangers, hundreds of them over the last 20 years. You know, I've shared this with genuinely hundreds of people, and it's lovely to share it with people that I've connected with and known, but who maybe didn't know that I could share something like this too that might be able to help you. So thank you all very much for your very precious attention. I know how precious attention is, and I know how much competition there is for it. And I think now you will all have a stronger sense of that as well. So thank you all very much for your extremely precious attention. As the Toltecs used to say, there is no payment but attention. And so that's a lovely line to think of, that there is no payment. The only true payment in the world is attention. And that's why in school you were told, pay attention. You were a bit of a pain, were you, Sab? I've had a few pains in my life as well. Well, it's all forgotten now. In the field of awareness, it's all equally unimportant, and we're all trying to find our way through into skillful expression of what's moving through us. So thank you all so much. It's been such a pleasure. I'm going to let you all get on with your Friday evenings now. I'm going to get back and see what the kids have done to the place while I've been away talking to you lot. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend and have a great festive season, whatever it is for you. Thank you, studio.